Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So now we are continuing with the masail related to zakat and livestock. So he says, Faslun. So previous masala, just to recap what we talked about the concept of horses, and then we mentioned the various opinions of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah regarding horses, if they're only males, only females, and if there's a mixture. So we mentioned all those, and also the opinion of the Sahibain, which is there's no zakat on horses unless the horses are for sale purposes. And then we talked about the concept of zakat when it comes to donkeys and others. And the main sort of like underlying principle is that if there isn't anything which the Sharia has mentioned, then we can't use a form of qiyas to try and figure out the zakat of things other than what the legislator has stipulated. Okay, faslun. This is a subchapter now. وَلَيْسَ فِي الْفُصْلَانِ وَالْحُمْلَانِ وَالْعَجَاجِيلِ صَدَقَةٌ عند أبي حنيفة إلا أن يكون معها كبار. So this is now the next masala. So this next masala now is talking about the concept of like baby animals. Yeah, so in other words, like young camels, young cows, young goats. Okay, so over here, laysa fil fuslan. Fuslan is the jama of fasl. Yeah, and this is a baby camel. So baby camel, basically, it hasn't reached, like you can say, adulthood. It hasn't reached makhad level. Makhad. Yeah, so it hasn't become ibn makhad or binti makhad. It's young. And humlan is the jama of hamil, yeah, which is baby goats. And the ajajil, yeah, this is the jama of ajul, ajal, which is a baby cow, yeah, calf. So, in other words, there is no zakat in these. According to Imam Hanifa, one of his opinions is there is no zakat in these. So if you had 5 baby camels, there's no zakat. If you had 10 baby camels, there's no zakat. If you had 20, no zakat, etc. And likewise, cows. If you had ajajil, 30 baby cows, no zakat. 40, no zakat. Humlan, the same thing as well. Yeah, baby goats, lambs, there's no zakat. According to Imam Hanifa rahimahullah, illa an yakuna ma'aha kibar, unless with the animal there is kibar. Yeah, there's like adults. Now, some of the later Hanafis have sort of raised an objection here. That objection basically is that when you say that there is no zakat in baby animals, so let's for example like take a baby, I don't know, goat that's less than under 1 year old. There can't be zakat in there anyway. Like, it's not even perceivable that there can be a baby because first of all, you have to have the animals for a year. If you have the animals for a year, they're obviously going to be more than 1 year old. Yeah, so how is it possible that you can even theoretically have zakat in there? So it's something which is not even theoretically possible. So some of the later Hanafis have said, well, there are some scenarios where this can actually happen. Yeah, so if you look at the Hashia over here, it says, قِيلَ فِي سُورَةِ الْمَسَألة. So there's 2 sort of scenarios that they bring that can be plausible. رَجُلٌ اشْتَرَى 25 مِنَ الْفَصْلَانِ. So a man has purchased 25 faslan, yeah, baby camels. Now normally if you had 25 adult camels, then you have to give, the binti makhad. Or 30 min al-ajajil, or a person has 30 calves, baby cows. Or 40 min al-hamlan, 40 baby goats, yeah, lambs. That's one scenario, that's one possibility. A person buys them, yeah, ishtara, he's purchased them. Or wuhiba lahu dhalika, or it was gifted to him. Yeah, so someone gifted him 25 camels or 25 baby camels, 25 baby cows, and 30 baby cows and 40 baby goats. هل ينعقد عليه الحول? Can this be sufficient for a whole to start, like a zakat year to start? or not, because if there's no zakat in them, the zakat year can't start. So this guy has now, let's say I have purchased 25 baby camels. My zakat year can't even start, because for them to start, they have to themselves be zakatable assets, and they're not zakatable assets. So he says, ala qawli Abi Hanifa Muhammad la yanaqid. According to Abu Hanifa's qawl. Yeah. So in other words, remember when it says ala qawli, ala qawl, then ala qawl basically means that Abu Hanifa hasn't said this, but based upon Abu Hanifa, what he said in something else. It's like what we call a takhrij, like, you're deriving. So ala qawli Abi Hanifa Muhammad la yanaqid, then the bait will not, the zakat year will not start. وَإِنَّ غَيْرِهِمَا, and then according to others, most likely Abu Yusuf, it will start. حَتَّى لَوْ حَالَ عَلَيْهَا الْحَوْلِ, so much so that if 1 year passes, مِنْ حِينِ مَلَكَ, since the time that I became, so let's say I became owner of these camels on the 1st of Ramadan 2021, and then 1 year passes, it's now the 1st of Ramadan 2022. According to this opinion, on the 1st of Ramadan 2022, I will have to give zakat of those. So this is one way we can look at it. Another possible way we look at it is وَصُورَتُهَا إِذَا كَانَ لَهُ نِصَابٌ صَائِمًا. So let's say, for example, I've got adult camels. So therefore, on the 1st of Ramadan, 2021, I've got adult camels, and therefore my zakat year starts. Okay? فَمَضَى عَلَيْهِ سِتَّةَ أَشْهُرٍ. 6 months goes by. Okay? فَتَوَالَدَتْ مِثْلَ عَدَدِهَا. And these camels, these 25 camels, or 30 cows, or 40 goats, adult ones obviously, they give birth to the same number as I've got. So if there's 25, they've given birth to 25. So now I've got 50 camels. And if it's 30 cows, they've given birth to 30 calves. It's now 60. And if it's 40 goats, then they've given birth to 40 lamb. So now there's obviously 80. Okay. ثُمَّ هَلَكَتِ الْأُصُولِ. And then just before the year finished, so remember, it's the 1st of Ramadan, 6 months has gone by, these adults have given birth to babies, and then a month later, the adults die, and the babies are still there. So now I'm back to 25, but this time I've got 25 baby camels, and this time I've got 30 baby goats, cows, and 40 baby goats. The adults have all died. Yeah. وَبَقِيَتِ الْأَوْلَادِ هَلْ يَبْقَى حَوْلُ الْأُصُولِ. So the year of the usul, the original adult animals, will that year still be counted for the offspring or not? So that's where basically the masala seems to arise. Yeah, that's where it seems to kind of become theoretical, possible. Does everyone understand that? Yeah. So in other words, when we sometimes look at Hanafi masala, sometimes the Hanafi masala might be very theoretical, like it doesn't really have any physical or practical possibility of it. So everyone understand that? Shall I say it again? Do you want to repeat it for you? Or does it make sense? Yeah? Okay. So, he says, in the Abi Hanifa, إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ مَعْهَا كِبَارٌ. Unless with the babies, there's also adults, at least one adult. So as long as there is, like, say, 24 baby camels, one adult camel. 29 baby goats, baby cows, and one adult cow. 39 baby goats and one adult. Yeah, إِلَّا أَن يَكُونَ مَعْهَا كِبَارٌ. Then you'd have to give zakat. So year goes by, you'd have to give zakat. Okay, so that's the like main view of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. ظاهر رواية. وهذا آخر أقواله. So Abu Hanifa has 3 qawls. Okay, remember this. He has 3 qawls. This is the latest opinion of his, right? The last opinion that he held, that there is no zakat on the babies unless there is an adult with them. If there is an adult with them, you treat them all as adults. وهو قول محمد رحمه الله. And this opinion is also the opinion that is held by Imam Muhammad as well. Okay, so there's 2 people on this side. وكان يقول أولا, but Imam Abu Hanifa initially, this was his opinion initially. He used to say, now what I want you to think about is, whenever you have multiple aqwal, you need to find what the Hanafis say about the reasoning for these aqwal. Yeah, so Imam Abu Hanifa has, let's say, 3 aqwal. What's the reasoning for each one? That's where the fiqh lies. The fiqh lies in trying to understand the ta'lilat, right? The hidden illah. وَكَانَ يَقُولُ أَوَّلًا. Imam Hanifa used to initially say, يجب فيها ما يجب في المسان. Yeah, that يجب فيها, meaning that zakat is necessary in what is necessary in adults. In other words, if you have the baby, 25 babies, you would have to give the same zakat that you'd have to give in masan. So masan is, musinna, like adult. Not necessarily talking about the cow musinna, but it's just talking about adult. Yeah. So in other words, if you had 25 adult camels, how much would you give? One binti makhad. Okay, if you got 25 baby camels, then you'd have to give. And likewise, if you've got 30 baby cows, if you had 30 adult cows, what would you give? Right, one tabi, and etc. And the same with goats. وَهُوَ قَوْلُ Zufar. This used to be the opinion that was held by Imam Zufar and Malik as well. It's the opinion held by Imam Zufar and Malik. ثم رجع. Then Imam Hanifa actually retracted this opinion, left it. Okay, so that's his second opinion now. Then what did he take after that? So what's his middle opinion? وَقَالَ فِيهَا وَاحِدَةٌ مِنْهَا. Yeah, so then he said, no, you have to give one of the same. So let's look at this then. His official position, the latest position, is that there's no zakat on babies unless with the baby there's an adult. Number two, his original first position that he had was that if you have babies, you treat them same as adults. Meaning, if you have 25 baby camels, you have to give one binti makhad. And if you have, 36, then you've got to give binti labun. And then if you have 46, then you've got to give jid'a, etc. Okay? And the same with cows. Yeah. The third opinion that he had was no. If you have 25 baby camels, you have to give one of those camels. So one of those baby camels, you don't have to go to a higher animal, right? A higher priced animal, valued animal. You just take one of those. So everyone understand the three opinions. He says, وَهُوَ قَوْلُ أَبِي يُوسُف وَالشَّافِعِيِّ. And this third qawl of his, which is like in sequence of order, is the middle qawl. The first qawl that he had was you treat them like adults. This qawl you had is you don't treat them like adults, but you still give the zakat of one of these animals. And the third qawl is the Zahir Riwayah one, is that the zakat is only if there is an adult with them. وَهُوَ قَوْلُ أَبِي يُوسُف وَالشَّافِعِيِّ رَحِمَهُ الله. Okay, now before I actually go through, I just want to read this hashia over here. Which says, وَهَذَا آخِرَ أَقْوَالِهِ. ذكر الطحاوي, Imam Tahawi in his book اختلاف العلماء. اختلاف العلماء is a very good book as well. Right, just like Sharh Ma'ani al-Athar is a very good book, اختلاف العلماء is also considered to be a very beneficial book as well, because Imam Tahawi has this very good talent or skill of being able to present the ikhtilas with a debate as well. And Abu Yusuf قال دخلت على أبي حنيفة. One day I entered and Imam Abu Hanifa was there. And قلت ما تقول في من يملك 40 حملا. He said, what do you say if a person owns 40 baby goats, lambs, meaning under 1 year old. فقال فيها شاة مسنة. And the person, he said, you have to give one adult goat. فقلت ربما يأتي قيمة الشاة على أكثرها أو جميعها. So he says, then what might happen is that maybe, like, if you have babies, the value of each baby, let's say, is £20. Yeah, so you got 20 goats. The value of each one is 20. Now what happens is that if you're going to say that if you got 40 baby goats, you have to give one adult goat. ربما يأتي قيمة الشاة على أكثرها أو جميعها. Maybe the value of one goat is going to be the value of most of the goats. So let's say, for example, 40 times 20. I mean, let's not use 20. Let's use the easier. Let's just do one. Let's say each baby goat is worth £1. So all of them are worth £40. And if you're going to necessitate an adult goat might actually cost you £30. So £30 for one, right? It's basically majority of the goats that you have are worth £30. So it's nonsensical. Like, how can you necessitate a high value Does everyone understand that? So this is what you're saying. فَتَأَمَّلَ سَاعَةً. So Imam Abu Hanifa then he stopped and he thought for a while. فَقَالَ لَا. He goes, no, you can't do that then. وَلَكِنْ يُؤْخَذْ وَاحِدًا مِنْهَا. Take one of the goats. So maybe this was his initial opinion, and then Abu Yusuf debated it with him, and then he retracted that opinion. So he said, no, you only have to give one. So you got 40 goats, and each one is worth £1. So you're only going to have to give one goat, which is worth £1. فَقُلْتُ لَمْ يُوجَدَ الْحَمَلْ فِي الزَّكَاةِ. So then he said, Abu Yusuf said to Imam Abu Hanifa, but in the whole database of records we have from the Prophet ﷺ or Sahaba, we have no record that they ever necessitated zakat on lambs. Okay? And we know that zakat is a amr ta'abbudi, and there is no sort of mention of this. So therefore, shouldn't we stick to whatever comes in the hadith rather than like we did with the donkeys? We didn't necessitate zakat on donkeys because it doesn't come in the hadith. فَتَأَمَّلَ سَاعَةً. So Abu Hanifa then he thought for a while. ثم قال لا. Then he goes, no, then there can't be any zakat. إذن لا يجب فيها شيء. And then he said, then in that case there's no zakat. فأخذ بقول الأول زفر. So the first qawl was taken by Zufar. وبقول الثاني أبو يوسف. Abu Yusuf took the second qawl. وبقول الثالث Muhammad. So you see how this incident sort of clarifies for us how these three aqwal came about. So it depends how authentic this qawl is as well. وأد هذا من مناقب حيث تكلم في مجلس بثلاث أقاويل. And some have considered this to be from the sort of unique aspects of his biography, where in one gathering he actually held three different opinions in one gathering. Yeah. فلم يضع شيء من أقاويل كذا. Yeah. So لم يضع شيء. ومن المشايخ, then he says ومن المشايخ من رد هذا. And then some of the mashayikh have said this story doesn't even make sense. How could Imam Abu Hanifa, someone who was so well grounded in fiqh and understanding of the aqwal, how could he in one gathering quickly change his opinion so many times? ومثل هذا من الصبيان محال. Muhal means impossible. Yeah, this kind of an incident, even you wouldn't even expect kids to do this. فما ظنك بأبي حنيفة. How could you ever imagine Abu Hanifa? Now, one thing to be aware of is there have been many sort of incidents where people have attributed wrong things to Abu Hanifa, and you can actually find a lot of these in a book called Tarikh al-Baghdad by Imam Khatib Baghdadi. He was a scholar in the 400s. So he's written a book called Tarikh al-Baghdad under the entry of Nu'man ibn Thabit, Abu Hanifa. You look under there and you'll find strange things that have been attributed to him. And then after that, read the response, Sheikh Zahid al-Kawthari. So Sheikh Zahid al-Kawthari was a very well-known Hanafi scholar. He was considered to be one of the wakil of the Hanafiya. He was considered to be a representative of the Hanafiya in the Ottoman Empire. And then when Ataturk came and the country was secularized, then he had to leave and go to Egypt. And so you can find where he sort of discusses his response. It's called Ta'nib al-Khatib, the book's called. Ta'nib means to cut the nose. Al-Khatib. So it's like a response to Khatib, that a lot of these statements that are said in here are just fabricated, false, inserted in there by people who are not supporters of Abu Hanifa. وقال بعضهم لا معنى لرده. Yeah, and some have said that there is no need for whoever said that Abu Hanifa will never say this. Even that is wrong, meaning Abu Hanifa could have said this. فإنه مشهور مستفيد, because this report seems to be a widespread report. لكن يجب أن يوجه إلى ما يليق بحال أبي حنيفة. However, it shouldn't be presented like this. It should be presented in a way that befits Abu Hanifa. فيقال إنه امتحن. Maybe Abu Hanifa changed his opinion because he was interacting with the student. So engagement with students sometimes requires the teacher to try and lead the student down a path. So you discuss the student, and then you say to him, okay, what about this then? Okay, that Ibrahim alayhi salam did with the people. When Ibrahim alayhi salam said, Hada Rabbi, he looked at the stars, and then he goes, this can't be our Rabb. And then he looked at the moon and said, Hada Rabbi, and then looked at the sun and said, Hada Rabbi. Yeah. So it could have simply been, and that makes sense, because Abu Hanifa is known for doing things like that with his students, because fiqh is about engagement. هل يهتدي. So anyway, so you can read more about this in فوائد ظاهرية. So let's go back to this then. So okay, there is this section as well that you can read. I'm not going to read this section for you guys, but وجه قول الأولي. So this is also a good sort of like insight into why Abu Hanifa held these kind of views as well. Okay, next. So then he says وجه القول قول الأول. What was the reason for why Abu Hanifa held this first view? The first view, remember, was that babies are treated as adults. أن الاسم المذكور, that the name that is mentioned في الخطاب ينتظم الصغار والكبار. Like basically, when the hadith mentions, the Prophet ﷺ said, take from their camels zakat, or take from their goats zakat, or take from their cows zakat, the term camel applies to adult and baby as well. And the term cow applies to adult and baby. And the term goat applies to adult and baby. So this is like an usul point. So in an usul point, when the Sharia says a specific word, what you call a khas word, khas, then that khas word applies to its individuals. Yeah, khas we call khas al-jins. So the argument is that, dalil is that basically because the lawgiver has used the word cow or goat or sheep, ينتظم صغار الكبار, includes adults and babies. Okay, what's the reason for the second opinion? Second opinion is, remember we said that there is zakat, but you only have to give one of the kind. So he says تحقيق النظري. He says this is to like allow. Tahqiq means kind of like to establish, to practically allow. النظر من الجانبين, the like nazar meaning like to look at the two sides. Basically what he's saying is there's two sides to zakat. There's the giver, the donor, and there's the recipient. Now, if we say there is zakat in babies, this is going to harm the donor. And if we say there is no zakat, it's going to harm the giver, the recipient. Yeah, so there's two janibs. So he's saying the reason why Imam Abu Hanifa said that in the baby animals you have to give zakat, and the zakat is only from those, it was because it's to kind of take into consideration the two parties. In other words, so that you're not burdening the donor, the giver, with too much. Like we said, if you got 40 goats and each goat is worth, if you got 40 lambs and each lamb is worth £1, and you say you have to give an adult goat, and the adult goat costs £30, you're necessitating more than a 40th. Yeah, so you're necessitating something which, so that is going to harm the giver. Whereas the recipient, right? So recipient is going to be happy if he gets a full big goat. But if you say the giver has to give a baby goat, which is worth £1, then this is going to be less burden on the giver. But in this case, obviously, the recipient is going to receive a small animal, which is going to have smaller meat on there, etc. So everyone understand what that means? تحقيق النظر من الجانبين. Yeah, so من الجانب المعطي ومن الجانب. Now, where did they get this concept from? Because remember, what we want to understand in fiqh is, when we have a concept in fiqh, we want to know where else in fiqh has this rule been demonstrated as well. Like, is there anywhere else in fiqh that we've actually looked at the giver and the donor as well to try and come up with a rule? And he says, yeah, we have. What's that rule? He goes, كما يجب في المهازيل واحد منها. So if you remember when we talked about goats, or we talked about cows, and we said, what if a person had weak, like a person has 30 weak cows? So let's say, healthy, nice, fleshy cows, you've got 30 of them. And then you've got these very, very weak, they're like half dying cows. Does the person still have to give zakat? And we said over there that some Hanafi said they only have to give the value of a 40th of that type of cow. So let's say healthy cows, if you've got 30 healthy cows, each healthy cow is worth £100. So if you got 30, that means £3,000 worth of cows you've got. So therefore, the zakat you're going to give is going to be of a tabi, which kind of befits that. But let's say you've got, malnourished cows, and each cow is worth £10. So that means £10 of cows, and 10 times 30 is 300. So you got £300 worth of cows. So then, therefore, it wouldn't make sense that if you have malnourished cows, you're still gonna force the guy to give the zakat, which would be for healthy cows, yeah, because he won't be able to possibly afford it. So he says, "Kama yajib fil mahazil." Mahazil is mahzul, and a mahzul animal, or huzal animal that is malnourished, underweight. Kama yajib fil mahazil wahid minha. Yeah, so just like in the mahazil situation, the Hanafis said that you actually look at the animals that they have, and if it's malnourished, very sort of like the value is very low, then they only have to give one of those animals. That's it, right? So instead of necessitating a tabi', which might be valued at £100, you just have to necessitate one of those. Does everyone understand? Now this is very important. Like, what this opens up for us is how Hanafis, they look at the reason behind the Sharia. As in, there is a reason for why the Sharia is going to necessitate one tabi for every 30 camels, every 30 cows. There's a reason for it. So therefore, there must be a reason that if the animals are 30, but they're malnourished, therefore, there should be a reason for why you should also adjust the ruling to cater for that change as well. So, kama yajib fil mahazil wa wahid. So this one is use this example as a basis to show that we can do this in the goats as well, the lambs. So if you have lambs, 40 lambs, you only have to give one of those lambs. You don't have to give an adult lamb for it. Yeah, makes sense, everyone? And if you do study fiqh, that's the thing that you should be making notes on. Like, that's the insight you should be looking at. You should be asking yourself, why would the Hanafis now all of a sudden shift away from a clear hadith which says that if you have 30 cows, you're going to get one tabi', and if you have 40, you give a musinna. Why are you shifting away from this and now take into consideration? Because the Hanafis are saying that the zakat is always taking into consideration the giver. It's always doing that. It's never ever burden. La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. Allah doesn't burden a person more than they can bear. So this would be considered to be overburdening. Okay. وَوَجْهُ الْأَخِيرِ. And the last response, which is the official position that's held by Abu Hanifa, أَنَّ الْمَقَادِيرِ لَا يَدْخُلُهَا الْقِيَاسِ. That the measurements that the lawgiver gives us, every measurement the lawgiver gives us, like the number of salats we pray, the number of rakats we pray in each salat, the amount of zakat we give, the number of times we go around the Kaaba, etc. These are all maqadir, miqdar. Yeah, miqdar means measurement. Every measurement that the lawgiver gives us, la yadkhulaha al-qiyas. This is something which is beyond any form of analogy. We can't analogize it. Yeah. So in other words, if you want to try and understand something which is an ijtihadi issue, analogy is fine. Like if I want to say, does wudu break if I go toilet? We say yes, it does. Yeah, because khurujun najasa. That's something that we can understand. Like it's ma'qul, we call it ma'qul. But why? If I say in Zuhr we pray four rakats, therefore in Fajr we should pray 4 as well. Yeah, because at Fajr time you're free, and at Zuhr time you're free, so you should pray 4. Or even someone might say, well, at Zuhr time we should pray 2 because people on their lunch break. No, you can't use rationale there. Rationale can't be used over there. That's what he's trying to say. The reason why he held the last position is because this was the more sounder. Like out of these 3 like ta'lils, the idea that the word cow includes adults and babies, that's one. Or number 2, take into consideration the giver and the recipient. That's also a strong argument. But stronger than that is that zakat is governed by measurements that are beyond rationale. فَإِذَا امْتَنَعَ إِيجَابُ مَا وَرَدَ بِهِ الشَّرْعُ. So therefore, if that which the Sharia has made wajib, so إِذَا امْتَنَعَ, if or when that which the Sharia has made wajib it stops, doesn't happen, امتنع أصلا, meaning what did the Sharia make wajib upon a person? The Sharia made wajib upon a person if they have 40 adult goats. So in other words, the Sharia did not talk about lambs. So therefore, if the Sharia has refrained from necessitating anything with babies. Therefore, it should not be applied aslan at all. Absolutely. Does everyone understand this text? This is a bit of a tricky text. Yeah. So in other words, if the Sharia was to say that if you have 5 camels, you got to give 1 goat. Yeah, and the Sharia did not say if you have 4 camels, what do you give? Or 3 camels, or 2 camels, or 1 camel. It didn't say. So therefore, there's no zakat at all. Likewise, if the Sharia has said that there is no zakat when it comes to camel, or there's no zakat when it comes to, hasn't mentioned a zakat when it comes to baby camels, then you're not allowed to, from analogy, you're not allowed to come out with a zakat amount for it. وَإِذَا كَانَ فِيهَا وَاحِدًا مِنَ الْمَسَانِ. However, why is it then that Abu Hanifa says if there's 1 adult at least with the babies, then zakat will be necessary? Why is that then? Isn't that going against this rule? Because the hadith mentions about, we assume, adults. So he says, إِذَا كَانَ فِيهَا وَاحِدًا مِنَ الْمَسَانِ. Masan is adults. When they are with these babies, 1 of the adults. جُعِلَ الْكُلْ تَبْعًا لَهُ. Then all of the babies will be made as secondary. They'll be made secondary to the asl. What's the asl? The adult. So that 1 adult is sufficient to be counted as though they are 40. Yeah, so that 1 adult, the babies will be counted tabi, and the asl, the hukm shar'i, will apply to the 1, and the rest will be considered to be tabi. So he says, إِذَا كَانَ فِيهَا وَاحِدٌ مِنَ الْمَسَانِ جُعِلَ الْكُلْ تَبْعًا. All of the other 39 lambs will be made tabi lahu fi in'iqadiha nisaban. When, in order for these 40 to now be considered to be qualifying to start a nisab. Because remember, to start a nisab, you have to have 1 year passing. So in order for you to have 1 year passing, you have to have this. Yeah. دون تأديد الزكاة, but not in giving zakat. So دون تأديد. So in other words, in giving zakat, the babies cannot be considered to be like zakatable. But in initiating the year for zakat to start, they can be. Okay. Okay. So let's say, for example, or it could mean this as well. Let's say I have 40 adult goats. 40 adult goats I've got. And I decide to give 1 baby goat, my zakat will not be done. Why? Because in ta'diyah means when offering your zakat, when giving your zakat, you cannot offer your zakat in something the Sharia has not allowed. Yeah, the Sharia has not mentioned. So the Sharia has not mentioned about giving a lamb. The Sharia has mentioned that you have to at least give a 1-year-old. We talked about this goat thing. And there was ikhtilaf about the 6-month one. So the Sharia has not mentioned anything about the baby. So therefore he says, the Hanafis differentiate between the year starting. You can use baby goats with 1 adult to start the zakat year, but you can't use baby goats to give your zakat. Okay, so that's basically how Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah responds here. ثم عند أبي يوسف. So then that's finished now. Does everyone understand it up to there? Or shall I re-explain it? Yeah. So just to summarize, that this last opinion of Abu Hanifa where he says that there's no zakat on babies as long as there's no adult with them. Once there's at least 1 adult with them, then there will be zakat. Okay? And what's the reasoning for this? Because that the measurements the Sharia has set down, these measurements are غير معقول. These are things that cannot be fathomed by aql. Yeah, so they are, amr ta'abudi. And if that's the case, then the Sharia, because the Sharia has not necessitated a specific zakat for babies, then you cannot apply that to the babies. Yeah. Okay. However, if there's 1 adult with them, why is that you give zakat then? So well, the reason is because you're not really kind of looking at the babies. You're actually looking at the 1 adult, and you're treating the 39 lambs as being in the hukum of adults because of that 1 adult. All right. And this is to initiate zakat. However, just generally, you're not allowed to give in zakat, whether it's camels or cows or goats. You can't give a baby. Right? Babies you can't give. ثم عند أبي يوسف. Then according to Imam Abu Yusuf rahimahullah, لا يجب فيما دون الأربعين من الحملان. Yeah, so in the Abi, remember, whenever inda is used, inda is not the official like statement of Abu Yusuf. This inda means that this is, like we say, this is the position of Abu Yusuf. We assume this is the position of Abu Yusuf. It's like that, saying that. Based upon what Abu Yusuf has said about other masail, we assume this is his position. In the Abi Yusuf rahimahullah, لا يجب فيما دون الأربعين من الحملان. Meaning, according to Abu Yusuf, right, he would have held this position that if you have less than 40 lambs, there's no zakat. وفيما دون الثلاثين من العجاجيل, and anything less than 30 calves, yeah, so baby cows, there's nothing, la shay. However, what about camels? So he says ويجب في 25 من الفصلان واحد. However, when it comes to baby camels, he doesn't use the 5, 10, 15, 20 rule. He starts with 25. And he says that once you have 25 camels, you have to give one of them as zakat. Remember, that was his view. So if I've got 25 baby camels, I've got to give one of them as the zakat. ثم لا يجب. Then after that, do I have to give it? Like remember, normally in camels, when you have camels, 25 you give it binti makhad, and then 36 you give binti labun, and then 46 you give jid'ah, and then 60 you give hiqqa, and like that. So does that numbering, like do those exact number positions, do they apply to the babies as well? He goes, no. لا يجب الشيء حتى تبلغ مبلغا. He goes, then لا يجب الشيء, nothing is necessary after that, حتى تبلغ مبلغا, until the number of baby camels reaches a number, لو كانت مسان, that if they were adults, if they were hypothetically adults, يثنى الواجب, then the wajib would be, the obligation would be now considered to be like the second level of obligation. Yeah, the second level of obligation. ثم لا يجب شيء, and then after the second obligation, nothing would become necessary حتى تبلغ مبلغا, until it reached such a number. لو كانت مسان, if these babies were adults, يثلث الواجب, the wajib would be like tripled, the third, the third level of zakat would be necessary. ولا يجب فيما دون 25 في رواية, and there is no zakat when it comes to anything less than 25. So what does this mean then? So if you look at the hashi over here, in the hashi he clarifies this over here. Yeah. So it says حتى تبلغ مبلغا أي عددا وهو 145. Yeah. So 100. So in other words, this is talking about ولا يجب حتى تبلغ مبلغا لو كانت مسان يثنى الواجب. So حتى تبلغ مبلغا. So this is talking about like in the Hashia is actually talking about goats. Yeah. So he says أي عددا, such a number, وهو 145. 145. 145. No, it's about يثلث, or not يثنى, يثلث الواجب. Yeah. So basically he's talking about, like, in the camels, this is the one. مثان يثنى الواجب يعني لا يجب شيء حتى تبلغ مبلغا. There is nothing necessary until the animals, the baby animals, reach a number, or that if they were to be adults, يثنى الواجب وهي 76. Yeah, so the number would be doubled. So in other words, if you're going to give zakat, yeah, if you're going to give zakat of camels at 25, what do you give at 25? At 25, you give, binti makhaz, yeah, and then after that, you go to 25, you go to 36, and then at 36 you're going to give binti labun, and then after that, you're going to give. So he's saying, when is the next time when the number will be doubled? So 25 is bint makhad 1, 36 is bint labun 1, 46 is jid'ah, which is 1, 60 is hiqqa, which is 1. When is the next time you're going to have like a pair 2? Yeah, so he says that will come 76. 76. And what pair do you have to give at that number? يجب فيها بنتا لبون. Yeah, that's the next time now. So the binta labon is the next time. And then when is the next time you have to give a pair, like 2, like that? So he's saying that's how you're gonna work. Yeah, so it's gonna be 25 and then 76 and then like that. It's gonna go up and up and up. Yeah, so wherever you're gonna have 2 of that particular type, that's when you give. Yeah, so he says yeah, so he says حتى تبلغ مبلغا لو كانت مسان. So he says until after 25 it reaches the next higher number, that if they were to be adults the obligation will be doubled as in like you give 2 of that same thing. ثم لا يجب شيء, and then after that doubling, which we said is at 76, لا يجب شيء حتى تبلغ مبلغا, until it reaches a number where it's now why does he do this for? Like why is he doing this for? So he says the reason why he's doing this is because what he's trying to achieve is this idea of having to give one of them. Yeah. So in other words, if at 25 one baby camel is considered to be a 40th, that means double that. Like when you have to give 2, that means you'd have to give like 2 40ths, and then triple that you'd have to give 3 40ths, and if quadruple that you'd have to give 4 40ths, like that. That's basically how he's kind of going about it. ولا يجب فيما دون 25 في رواية. So according to one riwayah, Abu Yusuf, he says that you don't have to give anything under 25. So there seems to be 2 riwayahs from Abu Yusuf. One riwayah says under 25 you have to give, meaning even if you have 5, because if you have 5 adults you'd have to give. So therefore if you have 5, but how does that work then? Because if you got 5 baby camels, how do you give how do you equate 1 to be a 40th? You can't. So what you do in that situation, he says, is that you work out 1/40th of 5 camels. The value of 1/40th of 5 camels. That's the one riwayah. And the other riwayah, which is this one, that under 25, there's nothing. Yeah, does that make sense? وعنه, second opinion, أنه يجب في الخمس خمس الفصيل. And from him there is another riwayah which says that if you have 5 baby camels, you have to give khumusu fasil. So fasil is like a baby camel. You've got to give like khumus is at 20%. Khumus of a fasil. Yeah, so in other words, the way it seems to be working out. So basically in Arabic, how much is 2.5%? 2.5% is basically what they call nisfu ushrin. Nisfu ushrin. So what he must be working out here is that if you have 5 camels, 1/5 of a baby camel is equal to a 40th. 1/5 of a baby camel is going to be equal to a 40th of 5 camels. Yeah. So I mean, they're working out. Still, obviously, don't know exactly how the 40th is worked out. That, but that's what he seems to have worked out. Okay. Anyway, then he says, وَفِي الْأُشْرِ في العشر, if you got 10, خُمُسَا فَصِيلٍ. So if in 5, if 1/5 of a baby camel is equal to a 40th of 5 camels, then if you have 10, then that means 2/5 of a baby camel is equal to the zakat. And then if you have 15, 3/5. And then if you have 20, 4/5, like that. على هذا الاعتبار. Do you understand that? So this is another opinion of Imam Abu Yusuf's, yeah, of how to resolve this. A third opinion of Imam Abu Yusuf, وعنه أنه ينظر إلى قيمة خمس فصيل وسط. So what you do is you actually take the average value of a fasil. Fasil basically is like a baby camel, yeah, fasil, the one that separates from its mother. So you take that, the value of it, and you take the average value. Yeah, so you take the 1/5 of not those 5 camels. So you don't look at those 5 camels. You take the value of an average camel. So these camels might be high quality camels, low quality camels. So he says, وَعَنْهُ أَنُّ يُنْظُرْ إِلَى قِيمَةِ, you look at the value of a fifth of a fasil, wasat. And if it's goats, وَإِلَى قِيمَةِ شَاةٍ في الخمس فيجب أقلهما. Yeah. And then when it comes to so the goats, not the goat zakat. We're talking about. Remember, if you have 5 camels, you got to give 1 goat. So one opinion is you take the value of a baby goat, average baby goat. So let's say average baby goat costs £50. Yeah, and then you work out a fifth of that. So a fifth of that would be 10. So you write that down. Okay, so 10. وَإِلَى قِيمَةِ شَاةٍ فِي الْخَمْسِ. Yeah, and then you look at the value of a goat compared to 5 camels. So let's say, for example, just 5 average camels. 5 average camels, how much are they worth? So if we say one fasil is worth 50, maybe an average camel might be worth £200, let's say. So you got £200, each camel is worth £200. You got 5 camels, how much is that? £1,000. Okay, £1,000. How much is a goat worth? You say, okay, a goat might be worth, I don't know, let's say a goat is worth, let's say £40. Yeah, a goat is worth £40. So what we want to do is we want to look at the relationship between 1,040 and between the value of a fasil, which is 50, to a fifth of its price, which is 10. Yeah. So whichever one is less. So, what's the relationship between 10 and 50? So it's obviously 1/5. Yeah, 1/5. And what's the relationship between 40 and 1,000? So 40 and 1,000 is, how much is that? 1/10, 1/20th, like about 120 something. Yeah, about 120 something. So which one is less? Is 1/20th less than 1/5? So that's how you work it out. Whichever one is less. So clearly 1/20th is less. So he says, what you do is ينظر إلى قيمة خمس فصيل. You take the average fasil, you work out a fifth of its price. No, sorry, what am I saying? Fifth for? Yeah, fifth, isn't it? Fifth, 1/5. Yeah, 1/5 is 20%. Yeah, fifth of its price. And then you take an average shat in a normal zakat masala compared to 5 adults, and then you work out the value of which one is considered to be less. Yeah, and then you give that. Okay, yeah, I think that's what it's talking about. So in this case, obviously, which one would be less? So would it be the shat or would it be the 1/5 of the fasil? Okay, so unless I mean I've made an error here. So ينظر إلى قيمة خمس فصيل وسط وإلى قيمة شاة في الخمس فيجب أقلهما. شاة في الخمس. Yeah, so that's basically okay. وفي العشر إلى قيمة شاتين. So then obviously if you have 10 baby camels, you're going to look at the value of 2 goats in this. Yeah, you're going to divide 2 goats. وإلى قيمة خمسي فصيل. And you're going to compare it with the value of 2/5 of a fasil. So if a fasil is worth £50, 2/5 of that would be £20. So you got fasil is 20. So the zakat of that would be £20 of 5 baby camels, and the zakat of the goats in goat form would be 2 goats, and 2 goats, so let's say, are worth 40 each, so 80. So you got comparison between 20 and 80. Fasil ala hadha al-i'tibar, based upon this. Okay, one second. Let me see the hashia. I think I might have made an error. على هذا الاعتبار أي ينظر في العشر من الفصلان إلى القيمتين، قيمة الشاتين وقيمة خمسين من الفصيل. على هذا الاعتبار أي يجري على هذا القياس إلى 15. Yeah, that's what it is. Yes, that's correct. Okay. Okay. So let's recap this then, just to understand what's happening over here. So just to recap this masala. So we said that if a person has baby camels, if there's baby camels, or baby cows or baby goats, does a person have to give zakat on them? So we said Imam Abu Yusuf rahimahullah's position, which was Imam Abu Hanifa's second position in the timeline, is that yes, you have to give zakat, but you only have to give zakat of one of those babies, right? So that you don't put too much burden on the person. And so how does this work then? So he has two riwayas. One riwayah is when it comes to camel, you only start from 25, and then you only have to give, one of those camels, and then the next time you have to give, the next station of nisab, is when normally in adults two of the same one have to be given. So you said that's 76, and then the third time you'd have to give it is when normally when you have adult camels, when do you have to give three of the same ones, and then that goes up to 146. Yeah, and then the next time you have to give is like that. Okay, so this is how he says. And then the other riwayah of his is got two arguments. One is that you have to give, even if you have five, you got to give one of those. You just have to give one of those. That's fine. The other one is no, you don't have to give one of those. Right? Sorry, if you have five, you only have to give a fifth of one of those. A fifth. The other opinion is that you give the value. You look at the value. What's cheaper? Is 1/5 of a fasil cheaper, or one of a goat out of 5 camels cheaper? Whichever one is going to be cheaper, aqal, that's the one that you give. Yeah. Okay. Whew. That's a bit of a tricky one there. All right. So everyone understand that? And if you have any questions, put in the comments. Let's just summarize what we covered today. I mean, I didn't get a chance to actually read through what Bahr Ra'iq said because there's some important points. What I'll do is, hopefully next week, I'll just go over this again. If you find it still difficult, I'll try to summarize it as best as I can in the beginning of next week's lesson, and then we'll carry on with that. So later, so we talked about this idea of, do you have to give zakat on the baby livestock? So Abu Hanifa's official position is no, you don't have to, unless there's one adult with them. And Abu Hanifa initially had 3 opinions. First position was you have to give, treat them like adults. Second position is no, he says you only have to give one of them, one of the like. And the third position is the official one that we had. Muhammad has taken the last position, and Zufar has taken the first position, Abu Yusuf has taken the middle position. And then we said, what was the reasoning for these positions? So we said the reasoning for why zakat has to be given is because he said the word cow applies to adult and baby, camel, goat, etc. The second argument was we're trying to look at the janibain, we're trying to look at the giver and the receiver. So we don't want the receiver to be deprived of zakat if someone's got 40 baby goats. And likewise, we don't want the giver to be overburdened. So what we done was we compared it with the masala of the mahazil. The third position argument was that this is based upon the concept that miqdar of sharia, if the lawgiver gives a specific detailed number about something, then logic doesn't work there, rational doesn't work there. So we have to stick to whatever they've mentioned. But why is it that if one adult is with them, so we say if one adult is with them, that becomes the asl, and then anything else that's a baby was actually considered to be tabi. That's why the hukum shar'i applies to the adult. And that's why we don't use babies when it comes to giving zakat. Abu Yusuf rahimahullah's argument was the one that I just mentioned. Yeah, so his argument is that you have to give, and that's it. Okay, any questions on that? No. All right, guys. Take care, inshallah. See you guys next week. Assalamu alaikum.